Should we be making podcasting equipment more expensive to stop people with those absolutely awful takes on TikTok?
Everyone on planet Earth, stop killing. And if we do, that will benefit everyone.
Working for money. Imagine being so stupid that somebody's out there printing money and on the counter, you're working for it and then you're getting taxed.
I don't know if it'll help because some of the people doing those really awful clips are people with a lot of money. Whenever I think about like this specific topic of like, I know exactly what type of clips you're talking about. I've just done my best not to engage with them, not to share them around and stuff like that. Because like at the end of the day, the algorithm is running the social feeds where we see that stuff. Even if the gear was too expensive, they just find another way to do it. And the problem is it works. Like a lot of people actually are like totally into that stuff. So I don't know. For me, I like it being accessible for the independent creator, someone with like a real message, a real voice, be able to get it. I maybe just call them the bro podcasters, the really loud ones, right? With like, they've clearly said that same thing 300 times and it's just like trying to hit it home. I don't know. I don't think making it more expensive is going to help.
Whenever you're scrolling, you can almost feel when you're coming up to one. You can tell like when this guy opens his mouth, he's going to say something so stupid. Doesn't believe it. He's logged out every social media app on his phone as soon as he said it because he knows that it's wrong, but he just wants a few notifications when he eventually signs on. And
the problem, though, I think, is the fact that many of us we can't control ourselves to not engage with that. And so if we don't agree with it, we're going to very quickly get into it. But at the end of the day, that feeds the algorithm. Like the algorithm doesn't care if you agree or not. It just cares if you're engaging. And so if you're like engaging on it, that's the problem. So like so many people are like, I can't not say something because I disagree with this so much. All you're doing is adding gasoline to the fire. Everyone ignored some things that are posted by some individuals and being very broad there, right? If everyone ignored it, they would never do it again because it would reach 0 people, right? I had one friend and he found out he could get everyone to engage by just saying the most ridiculous off the wall things. We later coined a term called trolling for that. But he basically say something he doesn't believe and doesn't even care, but he'd be like, dude, thousands of people like reshared it and said, can you believe this idiot, right? Like stuff like that. It's exactly what we're talking about. If everyone can't control themselves, they want to engage with it, you're making someone really popular because now everyone's seeing it. And if we're all disagreeing, it's still just, it's top of feed, right? Because it's so well engaged with.
I like used to grow those like theme pages on Instagram whenever Instagram didn't really have an algorithm. You could just go viral anytime. And like one of them was like a travel thing where I would just blatantly steal people's travel footage, but I would change the colors of things that were very noticeable in the reels, and people used to go crazy. Like I used to always think that like, if I can get a hateful comment in the first 2 minutes, I was on to a winner, and some of them were so bad. Like, people calling me on names that they could have changed like the national flower to like a different color. You've seen a lot of top podcasters or successful podcasters. Have you noticed patterns on them, like what they do, their habits, anything like that?
You know, actually, I haven't. And that's what's weird to me. It's always like stuff to me is strange. There's a few things they all do, but it's not the actual content itself. They're really good at knowing their audience. Again, every format's different, but they really know their audience. A great example of this is Lex Friedman is like a big podcaster. One of my buddies went on the show, and the episode, I'm not exaggerating, was exactly 6 hours long. 6 hours, one episode. And I was just like, hey man, honestly, I'm not going to listen to this. You know, like I just told him like, there's no chance. And I was like, does anyone listen to that? And he's like, oh yeah, people love his podcast. People listen to like an episode over like a week. For me, like I always tell people my episodes, like I try it to be over 30 minutes or 40 minutes because that's all people want to hear from me, right? Like people aren't interested in Alex for much longer than that. But this guy, people want to listen to for 6 hours. Like he knows his audience is okay with that. So he's willing to do it. And the reality is that podcast episode has done exceptionally well in the space, even though it's 6 hours long. But I know that I can only be engaging, helpful, and interesting, and maybe even funny for about 30 minutes to 35 minutes. And then beyond that, I kind of burn out. And so like, I know that's where I got to cut the line. So for top podcasters, again, they're consistent. They got systems in place. They know their audience and they show up and they're really interesting and they engage their audience really well.
Now people see podcasters as like the top communicators, like they're almost masters of the art, which makes sense. But whenever like you hear like the bout of like, we'll use Lex again as an example because I listen to his show a lot, but like he's monotone. Hearing him saying in an episode, like he knows he's not that funny, so he doesn't try to be it at all. And like it's not really it's not overly entertaining. Like 6 hours of talking to someone can't be entertaining, but like he nails communication. Like he's an incredible communicator and stuff like that. But what do you think it is about these people that make them such great communicators? I know from the back end they're really dedicated and they're professionals at what they do, but the communication aspects, the part that separates them.
To me, the first thing is reps. I mean, sure, you can have all your education, and a lot of them probably have that. Maybe they're public speakers beforehand, But at the end of the day, it's reps. Like these individuals have done it. Like one of my friends, his name's Jordan Harbinger, and he's got the Jordan Harbinger Show. It's a good podcast. I think he's one of the best conversationalists and question askers I've ever come across. And I asked him, like, how'd you learn how to do that? And he's like, 300 episodes. And he wasn't kidding. He's like, about 300 episodes in, I finally like kind of figured out, like, this is what I'm good at. ASG, you do something really similar to this. We didn't hit record right away. We took a little bit of time to chat through it to kind of like build some synergy and stuff like that. He does that same thing. And I think it's a tell of like, hey, really good podcasters understand there's got to be a little bit more depth before you just hit the record button and hope for the best, right? Like we had an idea of where this was going to go and how people were going to be able to consume it, what we're going to talk about. Like that stuff goes a really long way. So I think that they're very prepared. And also they've got the reps. They put in the time. Like I don't think anyone ever wakes up and they're like, I'm going to interview people today. And then they're just like amazing at it. I think it takes time. It takes a while to be able to do it. And the other like core skill I'd say is the ability to listen. And I think that in today's world, that especially is becoming like a more and more of a rare skill to see people understanding like truly how to listen. So like not just listening to like respond, and there's like the saying active listening. Like they're listening so they can understand at the deepest core what somebody is trying to articulate and where that's going. And I think that being able to do that makes for a good conversation, because if you can hear the things that someone's passionate about and be like, that's where I need to go. I can hear there's something there. We need to keep on driving down that lane, that road. All this stuff takes time though. So I mean, going back to reps, it's probably like the core of it all.
Why do you think then people aren't as good at listening now? Because like everybody loves to talk.
Everybody does love to talk, and I love to talk too. So like I'm careful with my words here. I mean, I try to speak in sound bites. Between people who train me in my corner speak less and for less time. It is something I'm still working on. I think that we just live in a world where there's so much noise, social media, the way that even like TV is produced now, it's loud, it's fast. There's not a lot of like pausing moments, anything like that. And so I think that we're just preconditioned to want to be part of it. Belonging is one of the core pieces of like humanity, right? We want to belong. And sometimes we feel that we have to talk if we want to belong. We have to be able to speak instead of just sitting back and being quiet. But I'll tell you what, the smartest people I know, some of the most well-rounded people, they're the ones that sometimes say the least in a room. But when they do say something, it's brilliant, because I'm like, man, they've been doing nothing but listening. They figured all of us out in this room, we're all just like screaming and yelling, right? Like, but they've taken the time to really figure it out.
An ex-guest gave me a good exercise about that. I can't remember now who it was, but I still have the email somewhere. But whenever you're speaking to someone, after you ask them something and they answer, stay quiet for a little minute. Because he said there's a great exercise in it, because you'll see if someone's being truthful or not. So they keep talking means they lied and they didn't feel like they backed the point up enough. If they stop talking, they'll just stare at you until you eventually say something, because they know, like in their head, I've said that, nailed it on, it's your turn to talk. If you don't want to talk, we'll stay here. We'll have a staring contest if you want, but I think that exercise could be beneficial for normal people. But I will disclaim to everyone, I've tried it a few times. It is so uncomfortable when you're just staring back at someone when they have spoke. It is so uncomfortable.
Man, I remember a time when podcasting didn't have like the video element. When you were trying to leave a pause and you couldn't see the other person, like you didn't know if they were thinking about what they're going to say, adding it for dramatic effect, or if they were just straight up like stepped away from the microphone, just waiting. And you're like, so, like, but I think that silence is so important, man. Like I run a mastermind, and one of the guys in it, if there's silence for 5 seconds, he is going to talk. He is so uncomfortable. We always joke with him. Sometimes we'll all just do it. We'll all just get silent for 5 seconds. And 5 seconds, like, so what else are we talking about? Like he'll just jump in because he feels the need to. But I do think that silence practice and being willing to not be busy, like the term busy literally means to be employed with constant attention. And I think that it's so helpful. And I've been working at it myself. Sometimes I just put my phone away. Like even yesterday I did it. I just stood outside. It was like I live in Jacksonville, Florida, and it was like raining, but it was sunny, which is kind of cool. I always enjoy that. So I just like stood outside, like wife was she's like, what are you doing? I was like, just watching the rain. And she goes, watching the rain? I'm like, yeah, look, it's raining. And she's like, yeah, I see that. Like, she's like, do we need to call somebody? Right? Like, what's going on here? But I was just practicing that moment of being silence.
Speaking of phone silence, I saw recently there's like now a total of 4.5 million podcast shows globally, which is insane. And I know from where you started at, you probably could never have foreseen this, but I was reading about it because I couldn't believe that number. And whenever it was broke down, it's actually more terrifying than you think. But it brings you back to like a theory I read a couple of years ago, which is Barry Schwartz's paradox of choice. And it brings me back to it because in today's age, everybody talks about how attention is literally a a gold if you can find it now. If someone can hold attention for long enough, it's incredible because people just don't have it. Like you hear now, like creators say you need to hook them in 3 seconds. If I need to get my point across in 3 seconds, that's insane. Like, but his theory is that when there's an overload of information, people don't know where to put their attention to. So it becomes a scarcity. So instead of, right, we'll pick that and that to put our attention on, they're just like, too much out there. Someone else will do it. I'm not putting attention into anything. And I feel like that's something that happens with podcasts because only 10% of podcasters ever get past episode 21. That's 20 weeks. It's not even 6 months. Do you think that there is too many people trying to be podcasters now because they have seen the money the big hitters get?
Yes, but I do think they quit really quick. To your point, we have an industry report. I'm pulling it right now. And for anybody who's listening who wants to check this out later, it's just podmatch.com/report. As of right now, only 36.5% of people who start a podcast make it to 8 episodes. That's 2 months if they're doing a weekly show. And then if you want to do 50 episodes, so like that's 1 year of a weekly show, give or take, right? It's 10% of people. And the people that are starting this and stopping, so that big high number you gave us, like that you mentioned, there's under 400,000 that are active right now. So like, yeah, there's over 4 million, but there's only 400,000 that are active. And it's because people get into it with the idea of like, I'm going to become the next Lex Friedman, because I already used that name, or Joe Rogan, or Renee Brown. Like we look at these individuals and like, I'm going to become just like them. And it doesn't happen in 6 weeks. And then we're like, well, I guess it doesn't work. But like the reality is, man, whenever I had someone recently ask me, they're like, hey, how do I become like the next Joe Rogan? I was like, well, when I was a kid, I watched Joe Rogan on TV. I'm like, so if you're not on TV yet, like, let's start there. Let's go and let's get you to A-list status on like a good TV show, like a premier TV show. And then after we get there, wait about 10 years and then become even more famous and then start your podcast. I bet you could be the next Joe Rogan, right? Like, but people just see it and they're like, oh, they're doing it. I can do it too. But the reality is it takes a lot of work. And actually you had a really good episode. Joy, something he talked about is you asked him some really insightful questions. I encourage everyone to go back and listen to that. And something that he said I thought was really just incredible. And he said, like, you've got to love doing the hard things. And you got to love doing them again and again and again. Because when the opportunity to make the play presents itself, you've got to have already done the conditioning. And so many people, they don't want to do the conditioning. They don't want to do the hard work. They want the reward, but they don't want the work. And so a lot of people look at podcasting because I'll be real, it builds a lot of influence, a lot of credibility. It can do a ton for somebody, but not without all the work. So people are like, oh, I want that. So they start and then they realize, oh, wait, this is work. I just wanted the benefit. If you've got the wrong mindset and your mindset is just to get rich and famous, I don't know if anyone can do anything for you. You're going to run into the same problem. People who succeed at any of this stuff, they put in the work. They're consistent. They do it for longer than they feel like they should.
Higher income households have a higher average listening time to podcasts than obviously the rest. But he then showed a stat of like maybe 30 years ago, it's the same percentage as people who read books. Do you think that podcasts are kind of replacing books because of that attention issue that we're having?
So I personally think so. I enjoy reading. Don't get me wrong. Like reading for me is a fun thing to do, but I don't read nearly as much as I used to. Now I look to see if that author has a podcast. And if they have a podcast, even if they've been a guest on a show, like forget they even have their own show. Like maybe they've just been a guest on a bunch of shows. I like listening to them because I find that they go deeper into the story. And it's like usually a host will be like, hey, I took this one chapter and you said this and I kind of don't agree with it. Can you explain it further? And then I'm like, whoa, I'm getting way more than the book would have provided, right? Like I went from like a one-dimensional thought that somebody shared to now 3-dimensional, like a bit of an argument, or not really an argument, but like agreeing to disagree on things, like 2 perspectives. And the way I like to learn is one, through that type of conversation, but also while I'm on the move. So for me, like I retain information best if I'm on a walk or if I'm working out or if I'm doing something around the house. But if I'm just like sitting holding a book, I don't retain nearly as much. But if it's in my ears when I'm doing one of those other things, I get way more. I know, yes, there's audiobooks, right? But the conversational flow for me is just so much more engaging. I love being part of like, for the fly on the wall, right? 2 people having a conversation. So in my life, I read way less books than I used to. Because at one point I was actually reading 52 books a year because I was interviewing an author every week. So I was reading their book every single week. That was my accountability to do it. But when I moved away from that, not that I wasn't burnt out on reading. I loved it. But I just realized I loved even more getting to, again, be like a fly on the wall in a conversation about something someone created, to hear more of like the heart, the passion behind it. Like I get way more out of that personally.
On the topic of authors, there's one doing a press tour at the moment, and I know you passed up the opportunity originally to have him on your show, but do you ever have any regrets now? not having Matthew McConaughey on?
My show just doesn't fit. Like, do I think he's cool? Like, yeah. Is he? So like one of my favorite movies is Interstellar, which he was like the star of. And so like selfishly, I think it'd be cool to just have a conversation, but like it's not what people come to me for. And so I just know that. And when he was doing that tour, I know that he was probably very much so media trained. I'm not trying to talk bad about him. I'm sure he got trained beforehand to be like, you're going on 100 podcasts. Here's what you're going to say, right? Here's how we're going to sell that book. I'm sure it would have just been another one. Like, I don't know if it would have been anything special or anything unique. So for me, adding value to the audience is always filter number one. I'd say that that's beyond that though. Like, I've had opportunities to have some other people on that were probably good fits and that I just couldn't see how it fit at that point. It was my lack of understanding. And so there's a handful of people that don't have celebrity type names anyone would know, but there's been a handful of people that I'm like, I wish I would have actually been a little smarter in that moment and had them on, because now I can see the value they would have added. And beyond that, the relationship that could have been formed.
Dr. Rod Berger taught me a massive lesson, which I've started doing recently, and I've realized that you do get a better conversation out of, which is kind of prefacing the people before they come on. If they have got something coming out, like a lot of these people come on a lot of podcasts, they've got something out, whether it's documentary, something like that. But I always tell them now, like if you've got a press release or if you've got like a little sample of what you want to talk about, anything that's on there, I'm purposely going in the other direction, purposely not talking
Nice.
about the topics, not asking the questions. Like, I know you're part of the problem of this because you get people to put their questions on Podmatch, and I've started getting a real issue with this because people send me the questions and go, "Can we just filter these in a little bit?" I'm like, "Please, if you want these questions, like I can happily set you up a chat bot and you can ask them and record it for yourself and put it out your own platform." But I want to ask you this because you've seen every range of podcasts now in your time. Is there any like celebrity podcasts out there that you'd just delete forever because there's no place for it?
There's one, I think it's Talk to Ya, whatever. It was like that girl who got famous
The
on
viral
I don't
girl.
know if that's celebrity, but like to me, like that type of show is like literally, if there's a show I could burn to be that. Not because I have nothing against her or anything like that. Just everything it stands for is the exact opposite of what I preach. Because she was somebody who had no reputation, no name online. She got extremely lucky, right place, right time. The right people saw it. Everyone engaged with it, and then tried to ride that success. Which maybe they don't. Maybe that podcast doesn't even exist anymore. But so many people like in my space were like, "See, it's possible to go viral in podcasting and overnight have one of the biggest shows." I'm like, "No, it's not." I'm like, if there are 4 million people that tried that and one of them did it, like you should go play the lottery because your chances are much, much better about winning the lottery, right? Like, and also don't go outside because you get struck by lightning. Like your chances are also better to get struck by lightning, right? Like, and I just don't agree with that notion that anyone should get a reward like that. I think you should get rewarded for the work that you put into stuff. Like if we look at any like real professional or athlete, no athlete just showed up on NFL like draft day and was like, "Hey, you all want to see what I can do?" Like, no, you've been working for 18 years. Before you could walk, your parents were throwing you a football, right? Like, that's what I want to see, is someone who put in the work, not someone who's like, the stars aligned and now I'm famous, right? So I would destroy that and anyone who's involved with it or talked to it. Not the people, just all the production stuff.
Yeah, I don't.
ASG, I hope that you and your editing team don't like piece this together and like just destroy my reputation. They're like, "Oh, Alex said he wants to burn all these people."
Unfortunately, Alex, I am the editing team, and you've destroyed my emails recently with calendar invites, so I am getting you back for it right now. But
I deserve it then. This is fine.
and I've mentioned Podmatch, so I have a question for you from it because Podmatch has been going a decent amount of time now, hasn't it?
Yeah, it started June 15th, 2020 was our launch date.
So you must have seen like some people that have grown in the industry quite a bit from then, because they were like, I mean, speaking from experience, getting podcast guests is a complete pain. So has there been anybody since the start of it that's gone on to be like a huge staple that you couldn't believe it became there?
Yeah, here's a great one. Oh no, there's like a whole bunch of great ones. The Nicholas and Tally Show, a really good podcast named after a guy. I told him not to name it that. Like early on, he started like the first week we got Podmatch came out, and he's like, "Hey, any advice for my podcast?" I'm like, "It sounds great, dude." I'm like, "Can you change the name though?" And he's like, "No, I think it's cool." I'm like, "I don't, whatever." And so he kept it, and I'll tell you what, he's done really well in the space. He's a great podcaster. He's become like a very engaging guy. Goes to the conferences, people like him. And he started like when he got started, man, I think he was like doing it in his laundry room is where he's recording. Like I can remember seeing like stacks of laundry behind him. He's since changed a lot, right? But like he's somebody when he got started with us, he was brand new. And I even told him, "Don't do this." And he did it. And here he is crushing it. So Nicholas and Tally Show is a great, it's a very good podcast too.
You had like many goals of business and stuff. You were you were very successful actually in the aerospace world before things happened and stuff. You know, I know you had an incredibly lucrative business at 10 years old selling golf balls and stuff like that. But I mean, you've lived a life and you must have learned a lot through the way. And I ask this to everybody, so don't think you're too high and mighty because of this, but I ask it in a different way for everybody. For you specifically, I want to ask you, what's something you believed in your 20s that when you look back now, your mind is completely changed on?
ASG, I listened to your podcast, so like I knew this was, like I know I'm not special. You got a good show though. It's worth listening to. So something I believed in my 20s that I no longer subscribe to. Success was for people that were chosen instead of people choosing to be successful. And I know I've probably shared that a lot today, but I thought that success only came to people that were like already positioned for it, already had like the right upbringing, the right opportunity because they looked a certain way. Right? I thought it was like they were chosen versus they could be self-made. And I think that at that point, I was really liked Forbes a lot at that point, especially in like my late teens, early 20s. And all these people, like you can see, it's like generational stuff. So in my mind, I'm like, "Oh, well, I wasn't born into like a rich family, so I can't do this." And to some extent, that might be true. Like my dad wasn't like, here's $1 million loan or like anything like that, right? Like that situation never happened. But at the end of the day, like I learned that I could be successful by building from the ground up, by being consistent, by putting in the work, by putting in the reps. As a matter of fact, I think it makes you a more well-rounded leader and a well-rounded professional. But at that point, I had more of this defeated mindset or maybe victim mindset where it was like, oh, the world's kind of against me because I wasn't really positioned to win. But the reality is you can get out and step out and win. So in my early 20s, I did believe that.
I was exact same. I thought you had to be chosen, and I was so driven on it that I thought that like your name would set you apart in that regard. Like you look at people like I look at people like say now, like people have like names that just match fame. Like someone like Logan Paul rolls off the tongue. It looks great in words. Like even like Harry Styles looks great on button paper. And I just always like look at those names and go like, oh, my name doesn't sound famous enough. Like these people have all been chosen already. Like I'll just go and do something else. But I think that that's a belief so many people have. But people have it from a young age. Like you mentioned in your 20s, you probably had it before that. Why is it bid into it so early that that is fame's chosen or success is chosen?
The only thing I can think of is that as a kid, you're told no so many times. And so I think that hearing no so many times almost preconditioning you to believe that, like, okay, first it's a no, but maybe it could become a yes, right? Like, and maybe some people just always hear yes. That's all I can think of. I don't know if that has a lot of merit, but ASG, I'm actually really curious. Like, do you have a thought on this? Because I would actually just myself would love to know.
So you mentioned my thought on it actually instinctively, but I think curiosity somewhere along the line has stopped being bred into people because I've thought about it from the guests I've had on. And I've said this to a few people and I've wrote about it on Twitter a few times and stuff. The people that are on that have came on the show that are ultra successful, like people that have got success that doesn't even make sense. Like I'll use for example Mike Patchen, who made 65 million as a CBD business owner. They're all got the one thing normal people lack, which is instead of going, oh, I couldn't do that there, look how long it took them to do that, or look what they had to give up. These people are always like, I'll try anyway. I might as well. Like, what goes wrong if it doesn't? Like Mike genuinely said, if it didn't work when he started, he had a job already to fall back on, so it wouldn't really make much of a difference. He was just curious to see if he could do it. And I feel like that's something that is stopping people from thinking they could achieve success as well, or like it's chosen because, for example, podcasting. People's going to hear the number I said, 4.5 million shows, and then go, there's no way my show could be in it. But they don't realize that Joe Rogan was one of those 4.5 million shows. Lex was one of those 4.5 million shows. And Chris Williamson said recently that he went 4 years or something without getting over 10 downloads on an episode, and he's now one of the most subscribed podcasters and on YouTube. Like, I think that curiosity is something that we are breeding out of people that I think maybe 10 years time we're going to see that we should have valued it a lot higher. But I know you're on a stop clock, but I have one question left for you because you've mentioned this concept a lot. Do you think that patience is undervalued in the world nowadays?
Yes, patience is undervalued for sure. I actually go back to something my mother would always say to me when I was a kid. She'd always say, I was impatient as a child. I think most of us probably were, right? But she'd always remind me, she's like, patience is a virtue, Alex. She'd always say it. As a kid, I didn't know what the word virtue meant. All I knew is I wasn't getting my candy till later, right? Like that's all I knew. But the reality is, I think that patience is one of those things that if you any of us who know a patient person, they're very likable these days. People that are patient are very likable because you feel like they're trustworthy, they're calm, there's just something about their presence that's different. And I think it's really rare to see people that are truly patient. And the way you can tell is if somebody's like fidgety or a lot, like as soon as they're like get a moment to themselves, like I gotta do something, which really the realities can tend to be me. I can feel like I gotta be doing something with my time, but the reality is sitting in the calm, sitting just patiently is a beautiful thing, not just in life, but in work as well. And what I mean from the work perspective is being patient for the result to catch up with the effort. Let the result catch up with the effort. Effort is something we have to do consistently, right? And eventually, if we're patient, if we see it through, if we continue to innovate, continue to change things, as you said, ASG, like continue to try anyway, right? Like be curious, continue going, but be patient with what the result, the expectation, what's going to bring. I found those people that get it. And I think that if we could learn to all be a little bit more patient, we'd be happier. For myself, behind the wheel, when I'm driving, I am the most impatient person around. Well, I'll tell you what, my blood pressure would be a lot better if I was more patient and willing to like, you know what, this speed is fine, right? Like this is okay. And I think there's something we said that all of us have an area we could start to implement this. And I think it will snowball in your life. If you can apply it in certain areas, it'll start to just show up in other areas as well.
So Alex, where can people find you? What have you got going on at the moment and what's coming in the future?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you again for having me. This was seriously a good time. As a listener of the show, I've really enjoyed my time here. It's been an honor. Everything I do is at podmatch.com/free. That's podmatch.com/free. Whether you're a podcast guest, podcast host, aspiring host, just interested in the medium, going to that spot will give you 9 ideas that you can check out. I don't ask for your email address or anything like that. It's just 9 things that can help you decide if podcasting is right, decide if guesting is right, or level up if you're already doing those things. And again, that's podmatch.com/free. But listen, ASG, simple conversations. Like this is where I suggest hanging out. Like this is a show that's taking people places. So thank you again.